Thank you for coming to the session. Lori is concerned that I just couldn't figure out the weather in Boulder because I looked at the elevation and I'm from Miami and I thought it must be cooler than Miami. That was a mistake. Miami, yes.
In 20 minutes.
Before I say anything else, I wanted to say that it has been a great honor to be here to teach the class, get to know the students, meet with the faculty members. This is just such an opportunity. Now the reason I'm saying all of these things is because I am nice to you, so that means I'm expecting you to be nice to me. Fair? Because I have heard just great stories about what questions that I may get. If I go to the second slide, I would be lucky. That's what I heard. Okay, here we go. I've been doing work for the past many years, about 20 years now, about equity and diversity in general. But for the past about 6 years or 7 years, I've been focusing on English language learners in Miami. But Valerie asked me very specifically that it's going to be about diversity and equity in STEM 101. So it's going to be a very much an introduction, and I can see why. Because I have been out on the main street and I look around and I just find that there are not a lot of people like me and people who talk like my age here. Okay, so it's very much about the awareness, some of the trends, some of the issues, and what's going to happen. So it's a 101. What I would like to talk about, as much as I can get through. So one is increasing numbers of non-mainstream students. And the second topic is persistent achievement gaps between mainstream and non-mainstream students. And the third is science accountability and standards and what's happening right now. And fourth is the challenges facing non-mainstream students, particularly in urban settings. And the fifth, if I have the time to get to it, is some notions of effective science instruction with non-mainstream students and what that means for teacher education. So that. So increasing numbers of non-mainstream students. This has been a great experience to come to Boulder to see the difference between Miami and Boulder. And then I will be moving to New York University, so I'll be seeing the great variety in a different place. So it's a nice transition of seeing various issues in different places. So having said, already talking about Hispanic background, another person about the Vietnamese, I would like to give you some sense of where we are in terms of the nation. So race and ethnicity. Race and ethnicity from the anthropology have very different meanings, but I'm just going to use it as the statistics uses without much consideration of the nuances. This is where we are. In terms of the 2007 racial and ethnic makeup of students in U.S. students was 55% white, 20% 1 Hispanic, 17 black, and 5% Asian Pacific Islander, and 1% African American descent. And this represents the lowest percentage of white students and the highest percentage of Hispanic students in U.S. schools to date as an ongoing demographic shift. That's a 2007 data. Very recently, I was speaking So if we think about Miami as an example, Miami 60, that's okay, see the screen here. Miami 60-some% of the students are Hispanic, about 27% are called Black, including Caribbean Islanders and all that. Only 11% of the students are white. And Korean reduced lunch in Miami is over 70%. I do understand that in a place like Philadelphia, the socioeconomic status is so low that they have to use a different criteria to make the distinction because it's so low. So the disparity is so wide between the haves and have-nots. And given the economy, you know what's going to happen more and more. Now another indication of the diversity is English language learners. So it used to be that English language learners would be in New York, Texas, Miami, and all that. But this student population can be found in virtually every school in the nation. Just read the statistics. Currently, there are more than 25% of the U.S. students speak a language other than English at home. That means 1 out of 5. And over 5.5 million, like 80% of public school students are categorized as yellow students. Now, when we say yellow students, we're talking about students who are currently in the ESOL programs. We do not even take into consideration the students who have exited ESOL programs and still learning English. So when we think about the English language learners, not just in the ESOL programs, but those who are out and under the monitoring, we're talking about a huge percentage of students who are categorized as English language learners. There are nearly 9 million Hispanic students in the U.S. schools, of which approximately 4.4 million Spanish-speaking students, and although Spanish speakers make up approximately 80% of the U.S. student population, there are over 400 different languages spoken by U.S. students. I'm not asking you to memorize the statistics, that's not the point, but just knowing the change of the demographics. Here's my thinking. And traditionally in the U.S., when we talk about the diversity, first we think about race, black and white, which is the history of the slavery and all of that story. And then we talk about social class in terms of poverty. Then now we are having immigration issues and illegal immigrants and English language learners, which may become.
Yeah, it's hard to hear.
I know that I'm just so compelling that everybody is listening. So.
Maybe I would say-
Oh, thank you. So we have racial issues, we have social class issues, and we also have English language learning issues. Jean, you live in Arizona. Would you say a little bit about the dynamics in Arizona?
Wow. There's not time.
Mm-hmm.
Maricopa County's, the Phoenix Unified School District is more than 50% Hispanic. The state is about approaching 35% Hispanic. It will, New Mexico, of course, is already majority minority, which is kind of an insulting oxymoron. And Arizona will soon be almost was in the 2010 census.
Can anyone share about the demographic change in the state of Colorado in the past years? I do not know. Has it changed? What does the demographic information say?
Can I say one? I mean, so both of my parents are immigrants from Ukraine and Germany. The idea of coming here and not speaking English is almost a way of putting your children at a disadvantage. I mean, so there's a issue going both ways, right?
What used to be even the English language learners group. So increasing concentration of yellow students have spread into big regions in the U.S. that lack a history. So it used to be the urban settings along the borders, but now it's just about every state that you will find English language learners. And I remember that I was speaking with a gentleman from Spokane. Why Washington, and he said that also you're from Miami. We do have a huge Hispanic population in Spokane. I said, Spokane, Washington, how come? Well, because of produce. Wherever there is a produce and migrant workers, there are just huge numbers. The most dramatic increase that we see of English language learners is eastern part, like Georgia, North Carolina. We're talking about 300, 400% increase of English language learners. So until you notice it, you will see them. I'm giving you the warning. I don't mean welcoming. That's what I meant. Welcoming. But still, ELL students are concentrated in urban settings. Now we have spoken about who the students are on one hand, and the other side is that how do they perform in school. I'm going to use science assessment as an example, and we have even her many courses who is taking a course with me right now, and a student of Valerie, and he just volunteered to do the analysis of an egg. And he's here to check me out, because I told him that I would give him the credit. Many talents that he has. So he sort of like summarized the, oops, I know. I need to know the screen. Can I see the screen?
Well, we've got to figure it out.
I could not put the two documents together. I apologize. Again, it's not my fault, but I apologize. All right. I need to go back to the screen again. Help me out. It's just alarming.
Don't do that. That's unnecessarily complex.
Just to function.
Just
Yeah,
do this.
that'll give you the three. Look, unclick that, extend Windows desktop quick. Unclick that, Ed.
Oh, so close.
Go back to our PowerPoint. That's what you want, because then you should be able to see that.
To your point, Mike,
Just in the meantime, any question, by the way,
being in
comments?
favor of English proficiency has been taken to mean extinguishing or abandoning, and it's a cultural choice.
Well, no, I understand that, but it's a socioeconomically realistic choice where you're condemning somebody to a second-class citizenship if in a predominantly English-speaking country they're not proficient in speaking English.
Yeah, but no one's advocating that.
But I mean, so the issue, I'm just saying the issue comes from a lot of different places, right? My parents were in, we just spoke English in the house because that's what we did.
Yeah, but it's culturally learned that to value English, you have to do what these two and I experienced, which is abandoning, not valuing. And what experts in bilingualism will tell you is that you can value bilingualism and promote both languages. And one does not have to be sacrificed to the other.
No, I believe that, but the question is which language is being sacrificed to which language? So you can go both ways.
No, I'm making the argument that sacrifice is the wrong construct,
Yeah, okay.
and that we can value bilingualism.
True.
And accommodate, not just value, we can accommodate it. We can find a way to accommodate.
Well, accommodating is an interesting question, right? Why should other people accommodate? I mean, so valuing bilingualism is something that you could do in the home, and to me, that's sort of like, that's where your family is the most important thing. What your family's values are critical. And, there have been a long history of immigrants to this country speaking very many different languages who didn't expect the culture around them to accommodate to them. And yet they still remain, go to Chicago and see proud Italian, American, Greek Americans, all kinds of different groups. I'm just saying, there's an interesting question about.
Their language. And it's not, just look at Switzerland or Belgium or Canada.
Well-
It is possible to value both and not have it be construed as accommodating or one being sacrificed.
I know, look at the former Yugoslavia where people then use those kind of differences as a form of civil war and massacre.
Sorry, it's entertaining.
No, No, but using Europe as an example of how wonderful the world is
No, no.
lets you forget about, the Holocaust.
I like examples.
Well, you may think it's trivial, but just 10 years ago, 15 years ago, people were being massacred in Yugoslavia for speaking different languages.
Oh, that was religion.
Both language and religion.
Okay,
So
let's
statistics wise, here we go. So we know who the students are and what's changing. And on the other hand is achievement gaps. And these are, let's see. Why do I have that? Do I go back? No, this one.
should be mirrored screens.
Presentations that you all
No, one second, I think it,
that just opened this one.
could I go back to one? I think it's one of the last ones. One. Yeah, one, right there, thank you. All right. Whew.
Do you want it on slideshow, because it's not on there?
I offered.
Okay, it's okay, I was thinking, slideshow? Yeah, I can show. So here are just the MAPE data, and I'm going to talk a little bit about gender, social class, I believe, and then English language learners. So here is a gender issue. Here is a 4th grade. And if you look at, whenever we talk about achievement, our hope is, if I use the ends, that everybody goes up and the gaps narrow. That's our hope, like that. So if this is what our ideal is, let's look at what the pattern looks like. So in terms of gender, even though this is statistically significant, it is out of from 0 to 300 scale score.
Can you tell us what this is? That it's been, what's the, what is this?
What's on the
What's
y-axis?
the numbers?
Okay. The number is from 0 to 300 scale scores of the National
Assessment for
Assessment and Racial Practice. It's called the National Report. That it has been going on for a long time to see the trends of student achievement in different subject areas for a long time. Okay. So if you look at the 4th grade gender, even though this is a statistically significant, if you think about the scale score from 0 to 300, we're talking about the difference of how much? 3 points, 4 points, statistically significant, but subsequently speaking, not so much. And here is an interesting question about gender. Even about the Today case of there was such a cry of a gender difference in math STEM, saying that we don't see girls and we don't see women in STEM areas. But if you look at at least the achievement nationally, statistically significant, but it's about 4 points, 5 points.
Is that math, science?
Science,
Science.
and which is applicable, by the way, to math and STEM in general. Then if you look at 8th grade, about the same. Okay. Boys are performing slightly better than girls, but it's not. Again, we're talking about 0 to 300 scale scores. The third would be 12th grade. You see the same pattern of in parallel. From, by the way, the assessment was done in 1996, 2000, 2005, and 2009 over time. Now we are going to then different demographic group by race. So blue is white, and all the bottom is classified. Let's see, the bottom would be black.
Red, sorry.
Red will be, blue will be white, and red will be the black population. And then green will be Hispanic, So the data are not complete.
Or that's the standard.
Standard.
You know what the standard deviation is?
I think I remember seeing something like 3 points or something.
No, that's the standard error.
Error,
Yeah,
right.
It's like 50 points or something like that.
I don't remember.
Sorry.
What's
Sorry.
the
Okay.
effect size?
This is 8th grade. Again, the white population will be the top. Black, African American, black will be the bottom. And then green will be Hispanic. And then the American Indian, the alpha blue seems to be very irregular pattern. I guess it might have something to do with the sampling or whatever it is. But you can see the typical pattern of a white, black, Hispanic, and Asian American. Now, what would you expect of the 12th grade then? About the same? So it's what we said is that we hope that we will see the entire national group increasing and gaps widening, but what you see here is a huge gap like that over the years.
What's unclassified? What thing is unclassified?
Unclassified may be just a student who cannot be identified in any of the groups.
They don't fill out the column.
Very elegant maneuver, let's see, so.
We can switch that back to the
No,
regular slideshow.
no, you're right. This
Okay.
is a free and reduced lunch. Again, the patterns are the same. Eligible for lunch, that's blue, and not eligible for lunch means that they bring their lunch. And the gap again is this big and then about the same thing. So by free and reduced lunch and by race, it will be about the same. So oftentimes the two are confounded because they belong to the same area. It's just a different educations.
Are the error bars a lot smaller here? Or
Which one?
the error seems extremely small in this comparison compared to the racial categories. The bigger,
They
which
are
are
smaller.
bigger,
They are
which
smaller.
overlapped, they're bigger sample size.
And free and reduced lunch is like a measure of poverty, correct?
Social class, or socioeconomic status, yeah. Here is 8th grade free and reduced lunch. Again, you see the same pattern. You can quibble whether that any increase is really substantial or not, and some people will say that the achievement gap is slightly narrowing, others will say, well, it's not really narrowing, but if you look at the overall discrepancy, it just is about the same. And if we look at 12th grade, it's the same. And we are getting into a different demographic variable. This is English language learners, those who are designated as English language learners and non-English language learners. I guess you could say that at least 4th grade, that English language learners are catching up, although it drifted a little in the pack, but it's not as wide. That's a 4th grade. And here is 8th grade. How much difference? We're talking about 50 points.
So that's the most, right? That's the largest gap
Yeah.
among all the comparisons.
And here is 12th grade. Again, if you look at the 2009, it will be about close to 50 points. So you could say that just by looking at the pattern, the English language learner versus non-English language learner seems to be largest gap. And some people may explain it that simply because they do not speak the language yet, so they don't, the instructional issue and assessment issue double whammy. It's in addition to culture and poverty and then English language learning. So this group seems to be actually has the widest discrepancy. So here's an anecdote that I do know. In the 3rd International Math and Science Study, or it's called a Trends in Math and Science, it's an international study. see not only the international comparison, but also the comparison by school district. And Miami-Dade was one of the 14 school districts. And 14 school districts represented some of the highest performing school districts and some of the lowest performing school districts. And if you look at the regression line is almost predicted based on socioeconomic status. If you know the socioeconomic status of the school district, you pretty much can predict that it's on the regression line. Because the relationship is almost like a 0.9 or something. What's interesting is that Miami-Dade dropped out of the regression line. It just dropped. It was even lower performing than what would be expected. And Miami-Dade was very excited about being part of the, now can we go back to the slide as we're talking, very excited about being part of the international study. And what do you think they explained that the fact that they dropped out of the regression line? How do you think they explained? English language learners.
Question, so you may have already explained this, but how do you characterize a student as English language learner in 12th grade?
Say it again one more time.
I'm just curious, when you're
Newly arriving.
newly arrived, so the 12th grade ELL students are not the same population as the 4th grade ELL students who are now 8 years later. It's always a new batch every year. So what about the numbers in those populations? Are they then roughly equal across? I mean, so is the fraction of ELL about the same in 4th grade as 12th grade? Because it's just as likely that a 12th grader moves into the country.
It's my understanding that ELL student population seems to be a little bit overrepresented in the lower grades and the higher grades.
And how long do you stay ELL? Like if your parents move to the US and you're a 4th grader, so you're ELL, are you still ELL in 5th grade or is that over now?
Ask your politician.
Okay. Typically speaking, ELL designation is done more by colloquial, social language than academic language. Typically speaking, not the academic language of science or math, but also being able to communicate in everyday terms. That's the ELL designation. Typically speaking, ELL designation is about 2 years after arriving. When you think about the who count toward high-stakes testing and accountability, who count and how long is a good wait until the students actually come toward the school? Typically speaking, 2 years. So here is what the research says and here is what the policy says. The research says that for English language learners, not just learning the social language of saying hello and hi and all that, but being able to do the academic language of explaining that when water evaporates, it becomes water vapor and condenses that academic language. That takes about 5 to 7 years. But then ELS students count after 2 years of coming to the US. So on one hand, you have this policy push, get them out of the ELL program as quickly as possible so that they get mainstream. And then the academic scholarship will say that to be able to function in school in academic areas, it takes about 5 to 7 years. So here's an interesting question though. What we saw the results is ELL students who are in the ESOL programs or English for Speakers of Other Language programs. That's within about the 2 years. Think about the students who are still learning academic language for another 3 or 4 years. And they are not ELL designation anymore, and they do not get the support.
Are there any statistics such as these that
Great.
track those students who are graduates of those ESL programs?
unless the students really stagger, most students get out in 2 years. That's what the policy says. Once the students exit the ESOL programs, they are called the ESOL level 5. That's under 2 years of monitoring. And after 2 years, those students exit completely and they become as native speakers of English. So here is a very interesting research question. If you really would like to know the English language learners, the more accurate analysis would be those students who are in the ESOL programs, those students who are in the ESOL category 5 who are under monitoring, and the students who had exited more than 2 years ago. When we analyze the data, whatever data we have, you know the group that makes the most gain? ESOL level 5. ESOL levels 1, 2, 3, 4 struggle simply because the instruction is in English and assessment in English. They just have the disadvantage of not being able to explain. Once they have a basic mastery of English, then when they exit, and even though they're still under monitoring, that group seems to gain the most, more than the students who are designated native speakers. So the question becomes this though, why don't we analyze the data by multiple designations and categories of EL students? That's the question. Why do we always lump English language learners and none when we know that students are going through the 2 years of monitoring? The students still need about 3 or 5 years to master academic language. I don't know why. We have a Jean and Lori.
It's all political as far as I see. There's huge amounts of money involved in trying to supply native language teachers to kids. The ESL really, there's the Hispanic street gang in Longmont call themselves 723 gang. You write that down on a piece of paper and turn it upside down, it says ESL. That's what they think of what they're getting in the school.
Just funding for
Funding
schools.
issues,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
FTA and all that,
Right.
including
I mean, that might be impossible to override, because,
Sure.
as you
Well,
said, basically.
Many districts under court orders to put kids in special classes because they don't speak English, and that's expensive. The state superintendent of instruction in Arizona, who was a lawyer, elected, MBA from Harvard, during which he was the director of stop fraud, made a point of saying he learned how to speak Spanish in 1 year as an adult. He did it as a superintendent of schools. He said, then why do we have to have these kids in special classes from 1 year?
Well, Keith, can I ask you a question? Are you gonna move to math? Because I am curious about how these stats compare.
You know,
for
math is pretty much comparable to science. Very comparable. Very comparable.
So even though you don't have sort of the language barrier, if you will, with the science test, which would require you to really understand vocabulary comprehension,
You know,
you
can
still are
think
seeing these differences, the same
the
stats. for
same
math.
comparable disparity. Here is the pros and cons. In science, at least, you can have data, tables, and all that as another way of communicating. In math, what's happening is that there is such a great deal of emphasis on problem solving. So that could, by trying to make it more meaningful, it becomes more.
Textually rich, probably,
Mhm.
problems. I wouldn't have thought about that, it's really interesting.
It works both ways. The patterns are very comparable. Now, I cannot say about the reading or social studies, but that STEM in general, they are just very comparable. I was thinking something about the innovations. Oh, so you could say that at least we could make the point about the ESOL levels 1 through 4, ESOL level 5, and then those who are non-ESOL and native speakers of English, even research, to make the case. If you wanted to have research data to make the case, So just by the nature of the limited sample size, you have the choice of putting ESOL level 5 as ESOL levels 1 to 4, or the other way, so that the results will look completely different. If you say that I want to just follow the designation of ESOL level 1 to 4, and then take a more rigorous approach, then the achievement gap actually tend to be pretty much stable. The fact that these students are learning English and then being assessed in English, and they still perform comparably within 2 years. For me, some people may say that when the gap is the same and consistent, some people may say, oh, well, the intervention is not effective. But for me, that's very effective, because if you have included ESOL level 5, the results might have been looking better and the gaps narrow. So it's a decision that you have to make. Typically, we have been using ESOL levels 1 through 4, and then 5 included, and then as long as we get comparable results, we're happy. Absolutely a decision. That comes into funding agency and how much we have money to support research to make the case. Now, so we talked about who the students are, what their achievement gaps look like, and I proceed. You even asked about the data. Do the achievement gaps surprise you? Concern you? Is that what you expected?
Maybe it's silly to think about it this way, but it seems unrealistic to expect students who are learning English to perform as well as students who are native English speakers in assessments and instruction that are in English. So maybe it's just not, it's disturbing, but in a certain respect, perhaps it shouldn't be that surprising. I don't know.
Also, the discrepancy by socioeconomic status and religious lunch and race and ethnicity, they just stay the same. I just wanted to make one point about the superintendent learning English in 1 year. We do have a great deal of a misconception about English language learners, that kids pick up social language very quickly and they really sound like native speakers of English because of vocal structure. When you learn a new language within the 12 years before you become like young teens, you can pick up the pronunciation very quickly. Adults, on the other hand, once the vocal structure is set up, it is almost impossible to get rid of your accent. That's the way it is. It's just a physical. So the confusion that people have of like a superintendent is that you have a young kids who speak just like native speakers of English. But that does not mean that they have the mastery of academic language, grammar, and proficiency and all that. So for that reason, they actually get very much masqueraded or misperceived that they are speak fluent when they don't. Adults, on the other hand, when you think about language acquisition, it's all about knowing the structure of the language, having extensive prior knowledge to be able to translate or transfer from what you know from one language into another language. That's the notion of bilingual education. Once you know the structure of one language, you can transfer the knowledge into another language. The same thing applies to the knowledge, the amount of knowledge, the prior knowledge. So adults, even an adult who has thick accent, may be actually very fluent in terms of writing and reading and comprehension. So that's the discrepancy between what we think of as children learning a new language and adults learning a new language. Because that adult simply has a huge amount of knowledge and capacity to master a language compared to children who have to learn new language but just sound like so fluent. So,
I want to get back to your question about whether the data were surprising, the achievement gap data. And so, like, one of the questions I have is, like, how I'm sure somebody's done a study. The one that's most troubling for me is the ethnicity data. And so the question I have is, like, how much of that can be explained by ELL and poverty?
that's another question that I would like to ask Jean and Lori. The limitation of these data is that they are disaggregated by one variable at a time. It's only by race and ethnicity or by socioeconomic status. These data are not disaggregated by gender, by ethnicity, or English language learners by race. It's not disaggregated. So it's really hard to look at the dynamics of the data.
all those data, like they don't have,
They do not report.
because you would think you could make some kind of statistical model and control for those two variables. You know, huh? You would think that you collect those data all at once. I mean, the NAEP
Yeah.
must collect them all at once. There must be a way to do
Well,
that.
but you can do it, it's just that she's saying that the way it's typically reported is when
They do not report.
So the commonly available data are,
They should report card
Right.
is by one variable at a
so
time.
you have to have access to the data set as opposed to the.
Ask Michael Martyr, he'll get hold of that stuff. Because he seems to argue, one of our colleagues in physics education, a majority of his argument has to do with poverty explains.
Yeah, it's socioeconomic.
Well, what does it mean when he says poverty explains it? It just
Yeah.
means those kids are relegated to terrible, terrible schools.
No, he's just doing correlations, really. And it's not within a school either.
Right.
It's school poverty, that is the variable of interest. But, you know, it's just like, that's my kind of question about the ethnicity data, like how it would be, you know, because that's like the most troubling, right? The bell curve and all of those other like documents that tried to think that there was something going on racially.
So NAEP does not report by the different interactions of different variables, but people will use the data to do further studies on the interactions, and this is as much as I know. So if you look at the data, I think it's something like that. 12th grade African American students have performed even slightly lower than 8th grade white students in science.
That's an interesting data. The whole African American data point is interesting as well, because
Now, there is also very interesting dynamics of gender by race form. So, if I remember correctly, white population shows that males would perform higher than females. Hispanics, boys would perform higher than Hispanic girls. And Asian boys would perform higher than Asian women. African girls would perform higher. So there are dynamics. We should use these national data more extensively for studies, but at least NAEP does not report more than just what they will.
Very helpful in
let's go
understanding.
get them.
But you have two strong people here, I'm just looking at Lori and Jim to make the case that those.
Give us the data set, let somebody play.
If I proceed, are we doing okay so far?
Yeah.
I just wanted to just give you an overview of how that we have such a diversity on one hand, and achievement gaps that are just absolutely stagnant on the other hand. So I would like to give a little bit of contextual information of the other complex issues of accountability and standards, and how those are affecting minority students in particular, but education in general. In the case of science accountability, science is just so messy, unlike language arts and math. Language arts and math are required subjects, so once you have the standards, it's there. Every state has to test language arts and math from grades 3 to 10, every grade level. It's a part of the NCLB. There is annual AYP, and the schools are graded and all of that. Science is sort of like stuck. It does not know where it wants to go.
Sorry, it's flipping automatically.
So in the case of science, now I'm talking in this case science and STEM, not math, but STE part of standards. NCLB has required that by 2007 and 8 school year, each state must have an in-place science assessment to be administered and reported for formative purposes, not accountability, at least once during grades 3, 5, 6, and so each grade band. And when we checked the database in about 2009, 1 or 2 years ago when we did a manuscript, nearly all states administer science tests for formative purposes because it's required. But it is very unclear how many states actually report the science assessment results. And it's also unclear how many states include science assessments as a part of state accountability. The data data are very messy, and it's incoherent, and it changes all the time, so it's really hard to figure out science standards and accountability. It's supposed to be reported, but does it count? Maybe not. Now let me go just one more, and then what it means for minority students. So MCLB had not required the science to be included in AYP calculation, although state could choose to include science as an additional academic indicator. As of 2009, when we checked the web base, it did not uncover any state that included science assessment as part of AYP calculation. Gina and Lori, is that about right? So it's a reporting of performance purposes, but not as a part of state accountability and all that. So it's a sort of like limbo. It was supposed to be part of accountability in 2007 and 8, and then it got delayed because they didn't know what to do. And then it got delayed and they didn't know what to do. And it got delayed again, they didn't know what to do. And now we're changing from NCLE to Elementary and Secondary Education Act, and it got stuck. So I understand that in Washington there is a great deal of debate on STEM. We should STEM, and STEM is a really now catchy word, and it's a beautiful. There's a lot going on in STEM. But how that translates into standards and accountability is a sort of question mark. So the ultimate goal will depend on what will happen with the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. Here is something about interesting about accountability and what it means for minority students before I get to the next level. When science is not science people, STEM, SPE, it's a very much of a mixed feelings about do we want to have a science accountability or not. So if we have a science as accountability, what would be the pros? What is the news about it?
What is what?
If we have a science as a part of a state accountability, what would be good news about it? At least it counts. And it gets taught. But it gets taught and counts. What would be the concern about? It counts. Maybe taught poorly. If it's not part of the accountability, it just does not get taught in urban settings. Oh boy, in Miami, it's very typical that principals will tell the teachers, do language arts, then math, science, maybe not, if it's a low-performing school. Social studies, don't even think about it.
So is that, but that's in mostly elementary, not so much in middle and high school, right?
Even in middle school, when it gets to the time for testing, science teachers are pulled into helping language arts and math teachers.
Because they're really good at that.
Very,
And because teaching science, they think teaching science would help with language arts and math.
they don't think that way. It's just that language arts and math are tested. Science is not tested. So,
Or tested but not used in any of the same ways.
the same weight. So, when you think about urban settings with the minority students, particularly at grade levels of the states where science does not count, very likely that science is not taught at all. So in terms of science standards, so the idea of the standards is that the challenge of high stakes standards for science for all is intertwined with increasing importance of knowledge. We want the students to be able to have the science knowledge and the practices and all of that as a part of what we say global economy, global technology, and the scientific knowledge as a part of inform the citizens for that. Science education standard document we present to the science education community, at least even though there are criticisms and disagreements, at least we agree on that these are the standards. Now, the standards document came out in 1996. That's National Science Education Standards. And you know that, I'm sure that you know that as a part of the race to the top, there are common core standards in language arts and math. And any state that they wanted to have a bite of the funding changed or adopted the language arts and math. And I understand that there are a lot is this though, another reason that it might be the case is that language arts and math and Common Core standards were initiated by National Governors Association and CCSSO. That's a state, chief state, and all that. And if you think about the governors and chief state at the state level, as an attempt to be part of the race to the top, it's all the state level. And you can see a lot of clout saying that it's because the governors agreed to do it. It's very different from the previous generation of standards, where the standards were done by professional organizations like NRC, National Research Council, NCTM, NCME. Those are more professional organizations doing the standards. But this time, it almost came out of the Governors Association with the state, chief state, never say, it's about the CCSO chief state. And then as part of this race to the top, and all the blending at the state level and district level is somehow tied to common core. So, here we go, political power of just doing it. I think at least in the case of language arts and math, what I understand is that the standards are pretty high. So people do not seem to be too complaining about that the fact that it's not diluted, so at least the next step of the previous ones. Now in the case of science, it plays a game very differently. This is happening right now that I understand. So a framework for science education has been in progress. It does not come out of the National Governors Association or CCSSO. It's being funded by Carnegie Corporation of New York, and the framework is done by the National Research Council, which is the great minds of the nation that goes through the consensus process. So it has been taking a long time, unlike language arts and math, where people have to turn around for the race to the top. So you may say, what do the science standards look like? By the way, science does not use a common core, they use next generation. They want it to be different. Not only that, unlike language arts and math, which are part of the race to the top, science doesn't have to be race to the top. So on one hand, they think that those states that have adopted the common core standards and that have the race to the top funding are likely to adopt the science standards. But on the other hand, given the economy and all of that, it may or it may not happen because science is not a required subject. What complicates even more is that after the standards came out in 1996, a lot of states developed the state standards around the 1996, 7, 8. Well, a lot of states actually undertook new standards before these science standards are coming out. So you have a Colorado new science standards, a Florida next generation sunshine state standards, and states have done standards already, and then we're going to have next generation standards as a national standards. And if anything, guess what? It has to be retrofitted. So just complex.
Retrofitted to,
That they have a new standards in each state only about 2 or 3 years ago, and then if any state would like to adopt next generation new standards, then they somehow would have to retrofit it their new standards, state standards, to align with them.
So we have to react to this national.
but it's not like, I mean, with all due respect to the states, we redo them like every year anyway. It
Oh,
seems to
really?
me. Yeah, every year we're making a new set of standards, it seems to me, here. So,
Yes.
it's time for another one.
Did you talk about what Achieve Inc. is?
Achieve, what is Achieve exactly?
First I've heard of it, I guess it's a test writing company.
So a company is producing the US national
No, they're
standards?
the
On the basis of the framework that came out of NRC.
Who are they?
Achieve is a self-appointed think tank-like organization in Washington DC.
You should.
Are they politically affiliated? Is their interests being represented by this corporation?
And by the
That
nation's
word.
governors and corporate leaders. It says
Yeah.
they were created in '96 by the nation's governors and corporate leaders.
Corporate leaders, okay, so there can't be any politics involved in that.
They're creating the algebra curricula
I would wanna sniff around if I were you.
Well, well, I mean, so everybody has an agenda, so I'd be careful about.
Other than that, there's this humongous entities of education funding right now. IQ is one, the National Assessment Project Program is another, Race to the Top is another. So framework for science education. This is as much.
Can I say one thing? I mean, the problem with science education is inherently more sort of essentially, can you read and write and speak English in a sense, right? So what exactly is the core literacy for science education is not clear, and certainly not controversial.
I think they're both equally nuanced and complex, but definitely science is
more diverse.
complicated.
Right.
So this is the way I think of language arts and math and science. Language arts, some people think of language arts, reading and writing, not as a subject areas, but as a skills.
Right.
Being able to read and write,
Right.
as a comprehension and all skills. Think of it, so not as a subject areas, as a discipline. Math, you can think of math as a skill area, being able to do numeracy, but math is a discipline. It has its own nature of us, it's discipline. Science makes it even more complicated because it's not only a discipline, but it has multiple disciplinary areas independently. So if you extend the notion of the language arts and math and science, and not only in terms of discipline and nature, but also what disciplines mean in terms of its components, it makes this more complicated. I know science people would like to entertain yourselves, but it makes life so much more complicated.
It just seems like they're all equally complicated, because language arts has to deal with language issues.
Oh, if you go that way.
You see, I mean, that's a different kind of complexity.
So if you look at the framework for science education that's coming out, at least this seems to be what pretty much the features of the new framework. One of the main criticisms of science standards was that there's so many standards, and it just seems to be the longer list of standards to cover. And in reaction to that, they have decided to make it much shorter and limit the number of core ideas in physical, biological space and all that. That's one, core ideas. So if you look at physical science, there will be about 5 core ideas. Life science maybe about 4 core ideas. But you consider the key ideas in each discipline. But what they also emphasize is that there are cross-cutting themes that cut across the science disciplines, like patterns, systems, order, diversity, causality, energy, form and function. Those are themes that cut across. So it's not a list of standards, but these are core ideas in each discipline, but cross-cutting themes across disciplines, and that's what the science discipline people and educators have been asking for, not the standards, but key ideas. The other component of this framework is that it is committed to the notion of learning as an ongoing developmental progression. So it's a learning progression that you learn certain concepts at 3rd grade, then 6th grade, and 9th grade, and 12th grade. So if you look at the appendix of the second part of the documents, it's all about the learning progressions for the core ideas in each discipline, how the students develop their understanding. The other important part of the new standards, the framework, is that it emphasizes that learning about science and engineering involves integration of both and then. So there are 2 important components that are different from, I would say, better than the previous standards. And one is, we always think of science as a science and always neglect engineering in terms of making things work. In the new framework, how to explain nature and how to make things work are equally compatible. So engineering and technology and design is a core part of the new framework. Not just why things work, but how do you make things work. The other is that in the new standard, in all the standards, the focus is all about the science as inquiry and science as inquiry. The new standards or the framework is that science as practice, doing it. So when you consider that there are core ideas in each discipline around, and then cross-cutting themes across the disciplines, students master those core ideas and cross-cutting themes over the grade levels, and it's about why things work and how to make it work as practice. And those are the core ideas. So at least in the case of science, I think there is a great deal to be happy about, because those are the criticisms of the old standards that the people are trying to address. What I understand is two interesting developments right now. One is that standards are going to be developed, and then there is also a group of people are very concerned about English language learners and what that means. So it's not public yet, but it seems to be that there is going to be a sizable funding to develop English language learners for common core standards in language arts, math, and organic science. So there are a lot of activities happening as sort of like a convergence of events. How do I know? Because I have decided to be part of the writing team of the standards. Instead of complaining and worrying about it, do something about it. And then in terms of standards, I have decided to be part of the English language standards at Course Common Core. So if I have a chance to come here again next year, I will share with you about what's happening.
Oh, we would love that. We'll like organize a group, like one of our Debers will, you know, at least devote itself to providing feedback for the standards, the core standards, which we've been, as Steve Boulder, invited to do. But I have another question, like, it sure seems to me that it shouldn't be like you develop these standards and then do the ELL thing. It seems like you should
That's
develop
exactly,
them for the ELLs and then pull off
that's
standards
exactly
from there.
what I'm very excited about is that as science standards are just embarking on developing it, they would like to address EL and diversity issues from the beginning.
Absolutely.
And as new standards are coming out, then people would like to develop EL standards that correspond to so that it goes both ways. So at least there is a considered effort by the people from different ELL and the standards, the subject areas people
That's cool.
to address those issues at the same time. So it's at least it's not too bad. I mean, there are some exciting things happening. Now, so I would like to just one more, and we covered multiple issues, but I would like to give a little bit of the challenges of what the situation is that makes it difficult to make things work. So I would like, I do want to say that I'm not blaming anyone, and I'm not. It's just that it's the reality of what's happening. So in terms of the challenges with regard to the teachers, since I've been working with elementary school teachers who I know the best, elementary school teachers need to increase their science content knowledge and ability to conduct a science inquiry. Having said that though, there is a flip side of it. Elementary teachers tend to be primarily teachers of the language arts and math. So if you include a math and science as a part of science, or if you include the science as a part of their language arts and math, there is this cross-breeding possibilities to make it happen. So what turns out to be the weakness could be actually a strength of the elementary school teachers. The other component is that teachers need to integrate science with the students, cultural and linguistic experiences of non-mainstream students, because on the one hand, it has always been, I know the typical expression is that math and science is a culturally and universal, and then kids come from different backgrounds, and there are two different things, and somehow we just do not seem to put together to make it work. The question is, how do you put the two together to be seamless, to make it work? Now, I'm talking about the elementary school teachers, for example, and when I think of elementary school teachers, yes, they may not understand the cultural and linguistic experiences of the mainstream students, but I say something, here's an interesting thing, and we were just talking about it in class, as we were saying. So today's the topic of teacher education. The American teaching population is a predominantly white female, and the percentage is about 90%. 90%. The first couple of slides when we talked about the diversity, particularly 2010 census will show that the majority and minority student population will flip-flop. So we have a high majority of typically minority students, and then we have teachers who are typically mainstream white female. We also learned that today, and it turns out to be a great resource, and Ian is going to smile. MCO has been in place for 10 years, and that means accountability was not part of the language of many of the teachers. So we have on one hand the diversity, on the other hand accountability that will stay, and then we have the teachers who have been coming from the traditional model of teaching. Students who don't look like me, who do not speak the language like me, who don't understand what schooling is about, and that. So if I just let through, with the ELL students, we have to think about English language development, and it's so important to have reach out. Here's the thing, whenever we think about equity and diversity, the studies tend to be small scale of boutique, working with a small number of teachers and try to make it work and have in-depth studies. And my approach is that if you want to reach the mass of students who don't have the access, the intervention should be mass. You may not optimize it, but you can maximize as much as possible to reach as many students as possible so that those students who do not get the access have the opportunity to get it. In terms of the schools, you would have figured out by now that time for instruction in low performing schools would be very regulated. It's block scheduling, it's a pacing guide, and you have to be on this pace on this particular day, and if you don't, then you are in trouble. Supplies are limited, particularly when hands-on inquiry is such an effective instruction, but you simply do not have the time or money to buy, and you don't have the time to do professional development. Oh, the last one, teacher and student mobility rates. It is just horrendous in urban settings. How much? So we did an intervention of a third, fourth, and fifth grade teachers for 3 years, and it's supposed to be a 3-year intervention. And schools signed up to be part of the intervention, and we looked great. When we analyzed the data, we had about, in the teaching population, we had about 190 teachers altogether for 1 year. The second year, how many do you think we had teachers who stayed on for 3 years? 80. Third year, 35.
Holy moly.
You have to target so many teachers for to end up with any sort of population at the end. Wow.
So here is my concern, that with all the interventions and large scale innovations and scale up and all of that, and those scale up projects should be in urban settings to impact as much as possible, and those are the funding priorities. But do we have any mechanism of taking into consideration of teacher mobility, student mobility? I'm not talking even about the analysis. It's even implementation. We're still revolving door in and out and in and out.
And they were like, who would stay? If I were an elementary teacher and they gave me a script, I'm not hanging out for very long, you know? I mean, you can almost imagine, like, why would you stay in a situation where you're undervalued and treated poorly?
So that leads into our class's discussion today about that when we do not have the teachers, is it an issue of recruitment or is it an issue of retention? Which one?
Oh.
More the cases and retention. When did it happen? The first 3 years. How much? Anywhere between 1/3 to half. That's exactly your point, number one.
So is that going out of teaching, or is that moving to teaching?
Education out of the teaching force completely. So in terms of accountability, any educational intervention that are large should think about a school-wide initiative. So high stakes testing and accountability. If the science is a part of accountability, it's damned. If it's part of, it's not. Either way, it's just affecting accountability. It's affecting all subject areas, not just language arts and math. And it's much more strongly in urban schools because they are going to be sanctioned. And then state take over and charter schools and all of that. Also likely to be where most of the underperforming schools that have traditionally been underserved, and the other ones, the schools are being sanctioned, and those are severe. So at least I have covered 4 topics, and effective instruction, that's a whole different matter. But the intent of the discussion is just knowing who the students are, what the achievement gaps look like, and here's our projection. Suppose that we are becoming much more aware of, do we think that we are going to see any narrowing of the achievement gap in the foreseeable future? And if we ever see achievement
We
gap
have to say
narrowing,
yes, we have to, I have to
how
say
long
yes.
will it take to have any substantive gaps? So on one hand, we have the desire to do, but then there are high stakes testing and accountability that just hunker down on what we do. Particularly have a very delicate dynamics in science because it's not sure whether we wanted to do it or not. When I say science, means the science and engineering and technology all together. And then urban settings and teachers and students need a great deal of support. So I apologize that I have ruined your appetite for dinner. But on the other hand, you could say that I have inspired you to think about, okay, these are the issues and what can we do about it. So it's up to you to say I don't have the appetite or we should do something about it. The diversity, it's going to happen so quickly until we know it.
Thank you. I appreciate everybody coming at this later time, but who has questions? That they haven't already asked.
Let's see.
I got stuff on the framework, actually. I probably didn't hear the last 15 minutes because I was so taken by the framework for the science standards. And it seems to me, before you start with the framework, you decide what you're going to produce out of all this effort. You're trying to produce great scientists who make discoveries and generate new theories. That's probably a real waste of money to try to do that at K-12. Or you're trying to produce citizens that make more intelligent decisions about science and technology, both in their personal life or as voters in a democracy. And I think that decision will have a big impact on even what framework you put up. The framework there looks like it's slanted toward, let's make all these little kids scientists who make discoveries. That reminds me of the AAAS effort in the 1960s to reform the curriculum in science education, K-8 or K-12, whatever it was. They, particularly in its emphasis on cross-cutting themes or concepts, I think there's a pretty good argument that there aren't any, or that when you identify them and abstract them, nothing, and try to teach them, nothing's left. You develop no skill in anything.
If you decontextualize them.
And how could you not, when the point was about the diversity of all the sciences, how could you not decontextualize them when the full range of sciences are so different and so special in their construction, in their technique, in their skills? These cross-cutting themes tend to come out as measurement, observation, hypothesizing, inferring, and those, when you get down to them, are so different from one science to another that you can't teach each special version of them. And if you try to teach any one of them abstracted from any particular application of science, the learner has a skill that doesn't apply anywhere.
But I don't think that's the way you do it. I mean, like, for example, being aware, as a curriculum developer and instructor, being aware of the cross-cutting theme, we built two whole curricula, one in physical science and one in physics, that's built around the themes of interaction systems and energy. I mean, it's physics, it's plain old physics, but it's built around those themes that are scaffolded throughout the curriculum.
So you have
there's
to build these for every separate.
But-
Experiment actually was already done in California back in the California Science Framework, they were cross-cutting themes. And it was a seemed like a nice idea, but it was a disaster in the schools. Teachers could not deal with it because they felt they had to teach the things rather than build the
That's
things
the
out
problem.
of specifics.
You've identified that problem.
Well, I mean, I have to respectfully disagree. I couldn't imagine a sillier statement, because science is built around this idea of checking ideas against reality. All sciences do it exactly the same way. The ways that they do the measurement may be different, but it's no different about thinking. The problem is thinking scientifically. That's the hard thing to understand. You can see, I mean, people like to believe what they want to believe. They don't like to believe what the reality of the world is like. And that's very hard to force yourself to accept that this idea that you think is really great is wrong.
Well, I know, but
And
my
that's
goes
the
as simple
hardest
as
part. And
supporting claims with evidence.
Well, but this idea, what the major idea, I mean, I think your point is exactly right. What's the goal, right? Is it to generate a coherent, clear thinking bunch of citizens? You could do that with history and a lot of other things. Science is easier because it's not a matter of opinion what the charge of an electron is, or what mutating this gene does. I mean, it doesn't matter what you think, right? If you've got sickle cell anemia, you've got sickle cell anemia, okay? And you can argue whether it's a cultural problem or not, but when you're dying from it, it's a problem. And that's the hard thing to get people to do. And I don't think our educational system produces teachers who think that way. I mean, the problem is that's really hard, and unless you're doing it all the time, that's the difficult thing. People who don't do science, even for a short while, start losing touch with what it's like to be held account. I want to see the data, exactly. I want to question whether the data means what you think it means. And it's all too easy to make everything it becomes political, not objective. So it's an interesting problem.
I would love more than anything to continue to hash out more of this, but we'll have to do it later because it is 5 o'clock and I want to be respectful to people whose appetite is spoiled, but they have to get dinner anyway, or at least to look at it. But I really want to thank you so much for spending this time with us, and you're here for another week, or just till the end of the week?
Until Saturday.
Until Saturday, and so we really were,
But
lucky to have this opportunity.
But I asked you to be kind by saying that I said great things about the school and all that, right? You were very kind, so thank you.
Thank you.